beautiful. Welcome to the Astrology of June. Whether you're joining us here live or you're watching this in etheric time, I am so excited to dive into the enriching astrology of June. Truly, I am so excited for the times that lie ahead of us. I feel that we're really being positioned to claim a level of personal power that has been outside of our reach as a collective for quite some time. Um, this, I called the new moon in Taurus ancient future Earth. And I've been really feeling the way that these new technologies are really coming online for us. These new, but they're not new technologies, they're actually ancient technologies. This way of relating to one another, relating to the earth, relating to the cosmos, manifesting through consciousness itself. It's new to us in our lifetime, this new age, newfangled like way of relating to reality, but it's actually quite ancient. And the astrology of this month really helps us land this so much more significantly than we've been able to in our lifetime so far. It's not that we've been outside of the frequency of these technologies, like certainly on the spirit. If you're listening, if you're here now, right, like you're open to this, like the greater mystery of consciousness and beingness. And you've probably been on a journey of inner alignment, taking this action that feels like it's fulfilling this soul purpose. And we've never been better prepared to expand our power, expand our influence, and radiate the frequency that we want to see in the world in a way that actually topples the systems that we want to see dissipate, right? Let's get into it. So, right out the gates, we have Mercury entering Cancer. And wouldn't you know, he's going to be there forever because Mercury is going to go retrograde later this month. Whenever you see Mercury lingering in a sign for more than just a few weeks, that's how you know. When you know, you know. So, Mercury in Cancer is about boundaried yet compassionate communication, right? Cancer is a water sign, super in tune with emotions, really integrating this energy of um, the the feminine in every body, right? The way that the masculine and the feminine came together to create all life on earth, and the way that we all hold the codes of both the masculine and the feminine, we'll see with later on this full moon in Capricorn that we have, the way that that starts to come into like a more significant rectification in the what I hope will well what I hope is in the overculture. I feel like we're like reaching a tipping point here. Mercury in Cancer has us like embodying the um almost like feral mother archetype within us all, because Cancer is fiercely protective. And so Mercury is all about the power of your voice and the way it protects what's sacred to you. So I think like one of the opportunities here is to do some scripting around your boundaries. Like, what is sacred to you, and how do you intend to protect it? How do the systems and structures within your life protect what you've deemed sacred? I also think that this is a time where we're really going to be starting to integrate the Jupiter in Cancer era. So Jupiter entered Cancer actually last June. Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. And at the end of June, we have Jupiter entering Leo. And Mercury is going to be in Cancer kind of like through this transition period. I am a Mercury ruled being, so I do think that I am hypersensitive to a Mercury transit. And I think what's available here is this thorough, full bodied integration of how far you've come in, especially in the realm of life that Cancer rules from for you since last June, but also like in the thematics of Cancer, in your emotional expression, in your boundaries, in your protection work, in your connection. Um, so maybe looking at where Cancer sits in your chart, and this is obviously something we could do in a reading together as well, but looking at what realm of life Cancer rules for you and really asking yourself, like, how have I grown? Or also like, how have I kept myself from growing? How have I stifled my growth? How have I limited myself? And how have I blasted past those? Or how will I? Right? And then this is also, I think, a reminder that boundaries are actually for us to uphold. Like, yes, absolutely, in a perfect world, we lay a boundary and the people in our life respect them. Um, but more often than not, what our boundaries actually require of us is continuing to hold the line. So really kind of mundane example of this is if you don't work past, let's say, 6 p.m. period, you do not work past 6 p.m., but someone that you work with continues to message you after 6 p.m., it's not necessarily on them to not send the message. It's on you to not reply and then communicate when business hours roll back around to say, hey, sorry, this you reached me outside of business hours, you know. And if it continues to become a problem, that's when like the holding of that line becomes a little bit more like fierce in that Cancerian energy. But I do have like this tingling sense that during this time, maybe especially during this retrograde, so we're going to pick at this thread again together, but like, I really do feel this sense of like, there's gonna be a line that you have to hold. And this doesn't have to be like a huge, big blowout moment. It could actually be something that's really fortifying and really encouraging and really gratifying for you to do is to stick to your boundaries. And so, yeah, I think doing some scripting, doing some automatic writing around, what's been going on in this realm of Cancer and how are you bringing that wisdom into this next chapter? So, shortly thereafter, Venus is going to conjoin Jupiter in Cancer. And what a lovely transit. This is happening from June 3rd to June 13th, but it's going to peak on June 9th. So we'll feel the, crescendo and the decrescendo, but that peak energy is going to be on June 9th. Now, both Venus and Jupiter are what's called benefics. They are the positive, buoyant, uplifting planets. And when they're conjunct, there's always a frequency of blessing, of alignment, of luck, of charm. But Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter's exalted in Cancer. Jupiter is uplifted, venerated, excited, fully expressed, right? And so when Venus, the planet of love, beauty, romance, joins the planet of expansion and good fortune in Cancer, we might see like aligned opportunities arising. It opens the doors and gateways for prosperity, beauty, buoyancy to come through. And in Cancer, there's also this like creation and curation of emotional security. And I think also like allowing our emotions to actually take up a lot of space in our expressions, in our lives. I think that, I think it's what's her name? Lily Reinhart from from Riverdale. There was this interview where she was saying that she believes that the purpose of incarnating as a human is to come here and have an emotional experience. And, we've lived in this society where we've been told to like quiet down our emotions. Don't let anybody know if we're feeling off. Don't let anybody know if we're feeling sad. Don't don't let don't speak your mind, don't cause confrontation, all of these things to really suppress the emotional experience. And I think Venus conjunct Jupiter gives us an opportunity, especially in Cancer, to really allow our emotions to take up space. Like, and what would that look like? What would it look like to really allow yourself to feel your big feelings in a way that feels safe and doesn't like that doesn't like I'm saying this like kind of at myself like with everything I have going on, if like in a way that doesn't like dysregulate your life, right? It in a way that gets to be like a moment, not like the whole story, right? And so I think the opportunity here, as always, when Venus is involved, there's some good like beauty rituals. And we almost want to look at like boundaries with that. So, like, if you show up on social media, if you have people who are, like, what's the chatter around like body image when you're like scrolling online? What's the chatter around like beauty standards, youthfulness? You know what I mean? Where does that sit and hit in your body, and how do you create boundary that protects your expression of beauty? Also great road opening spells. June 9th, perfect day for a road opening spell. Honestly, maybe get you a 7-day candle, a pillar candle, and light it for a little bit each of these 10, 11 days, a road opener. It's also a shameless plug, a great time for a Jupiter mini session. These are 30-minute sessions, and we'll talk more about this later. These are 30-minute sessions for just $44, and we really hone in on what Jupiter is activating in your chart, what chapter you're closing out, and what chapter you're kind of like moving into. And this period of time would be a great time to really work with that energy of Jupiter. I also think there's a call here for intentional work with the electromagnetic field of the heart. This this playing around with like, how far can you expand it and it be sustainable for you? If you're in meditation, if you're feeling nourished, you're feeling resourced in your body, how far can you expand the electromagnetic field of your heart? Can it take up your whole house? Could it like take up your whole neighborhood without it taking in anything from the people around you and holding on to it? Can it take up your whole street? Can it take up your whole, can it take up the whole world? Can it take up the whole galaxy? Like, what is your capacity for radiating within that electromagnetic field of your heart? And then what are you seeding your atmosphere with in working with that? If you have questions about working with maybe we should probably talk about this on our Jupiter in Leo call, which we'll talk more about later. I'll make sure to listen back to this episode and make notes, because I'm not going to make a note now. And then, of course, like Jupiter's ending its journey in Cancer. So this conjunction is happening in the late degrees of Cancer. So as soon as Venus moves into Leo, they're probably like in a cross sign conjunction, but we don't really like feel it in the same way anymore. And Venus is really going to pave the way through Leo witnessed with Venus entering Gemini ahead of Uranus's entrance. And we talked about how Venus was kind of like paving the way for Uranus to have a more like beneficial, bright, loving transit through Gemini than if it would have just entered like a cold entrance into Gemini with no Venus to kind of like warm the space. Venus is about to do the same thing for Jupiter's journey through Leo, right? So this is about love made visible, love made light, Leo rules the heart. I feel like a lot of times when we discuss Leo, what comes up is like relationship to the spotlight, visibility, like celebrity energy. And it's so true and it's so real. But I, my experience with Leo is they're the number one thing that I think of when I think of Venus and Leo is the way that Venus and Leo is so proud of everyone she loves. Venus in Leo wants to brag about the people that she loves, wants to sing and share about what's on her heart. And so this is really about like the glow of adoring and attention in like an infinity spiral. It's giving and receiving that adoring attention, right? And in this way, it's also about heart centeredness. So I think that this time, over the course of these few weeks in the summer, it's a great time to create space for what's called, this is a Sanskrit term, anahatanad. And I know it just to give credit where credit's due because of the Animal Spirit Oracle by Kim Krans, which is kind of like my gateway into this entire career. And the anahatanad means the unstruck sound. That's the translation. And it refers to how when we're quiet enough and when we're still enough, our heart has a silent message for us that only we can hear. And Anahatanad originates in a culture that believes in reincarnation. So the idea here is that we can go lifetimes without hearing this silent message on our heart, that it's something that we strive for throughout our incarnations, right? And so creating space and having these celestial alignments that like uplift and support this kind of work, it's something that I feel like we've just got to take a little bit of advantage of, right? So one of the best ways I think to create space, if you're like, I don't have time, right? You know, it's like the old adage, it's like if you don't have time to meditate for 15 minutes a day, meditate for 30. But in all seriousness, I know that a lot of the folks like tuning into the replay, like y'all have kids. Like I have so many moms in my network. So like, and I have animals and they do like to get me up out of bed, but it's different. So what I always suggest, instead of like some grand ritual that you're going to perform in all of your copious free time, it's just like right before you go to bed and right before you put your feet on the floor in the morning, just checking in. Maybe one hand on the heart, one hand on the solar plexus or sacral above or below the belly button, or maybe both hands on the heart. And just what's on my heart today? And holding space for this and the quiet knowing. And sometimes it's silly stuff. Sometimes it's like, I'm hungry. Sometimes it's like, I have got to get up. And those aren't really impulses from our heart, right? They're impulses from our mind. And it is what it is. But sometimes our heart will speak. And so carving out this space feels really important while Venus is in Leo. This is also a great time for mirror work. This is, you know, coming eye to eye with yourself in the mirror with some level of intention. The most recent like mirror work I did was a ceremony from Black Moon Lilith Rising by Adama Sase. And it was like a shadow work scrying energy. But I feel like this is more about like gazing into your own eyes through the eyes of source, through the eyes of God, through the eyes of universe, whatever you want to name that frequency, and seeing yourself as this like radiant child of the universe and letting yourself like bask in that. And also like letting yourself like consider like how visible do you want to become? Leo is bright, right? Leo's ruled by the sun. So when we're headed into this like very big Leo chapter with Leo Jupiter entering Leo later this month, it's like how visible do you want to allow yourself to become? And what sensations and visualizations do you receive as you're gazing upon yourself in this way? All about some rose water aura cleanses, maybe even cleansing the mirror with rose water before and after this mirror work. And then, of course, glamour and visibility magic. We kind of got into that with the mirror work, but whatever that looks like for you, sometimes when I say glamour magic, I feel like some people like there's this like connotation that it has to do with makeup. And it's like, glamour magic can look that way, and anybody can do glamour magic, because glamour magic is really about whether you wear makeup or not, because glamour magic is really about like creating almost like a new like surface of self that we can step into when we do a very specific work in the world, or we want to have a very specific influence in the world. So it sounds like we need to do a little workshop on glamour magic too. I'm like, let's just host all the workshops forever and ever. This leads us right into a new moon in Gemini. I when you hear other astrologers talk about this moon, I don't know what they're going to say. What I'm here to tell you is that this is an anti-patriarchy moon. When I looked at the chart, I was like, oh my God, it's finally happening. This moon is opposite Black Moon Lilith. And because Black Moon Lilith right now, or at the time of this moon, is going to be sitting in Sagittarius, where we just had that full moon, right? So this moon, the new moon happens, right, when the sun and the moon are exactly conjunct in the sky. And the sun and the moon are going to be opposite Black Moon Lilith, which really represents the dark feminine in us all. The version of ourselves that has been shunned, othered, rejected, cast off for being like too much, for being too individualistic, for being too strong, for being too powerful, for not submitting, for not giving in. And so this moon is also going to be sextile Chiron in the late degrees of Aries. And Chiron really represents the what we're here to heal as a collective. And in this way, Black Moon Lilith and Chiron are going to be trine in the sky. So they all have these like supportive, well, the opposition is tension, divine tension, but then they're connected in this way of like really creating this portal, healing the dark feminine within every body, right? One of the reasons that, we say like patriarchy hurts all people is because what patriarchy like hates is within every single one of us. Like, no matter what our body looks like, no matter what our identity is, there's dark feminine frequency within all of us because we all come from the same source. And so this is about new ideas, new truths for sure, which is probably what a lot of people are going to be talking about in regard to this moon, because it's the new moon in Gemini, Uranus is co-present, all of this. But what I'm really seeing is the way that I'm going to say we might be finally taking a step as more of a over culture rather than like the subcultures that we're a part of. This push toward reclaiming and working with our shadow feminine. And when we venerate, when we uplift the dark feminine, the world heals like on everything that I am. And so I am recommending here some reflective journaling around your relationship with the feminine. Like when you consider both in the light and in the shadow, like what is your relationship with the feminine? Does it feel uncomfortable to imagine femininity existing in your body? Or does it feel really good and really nourishing? And what's underneath that? Only pressing yourself as it feels aligned, keeping your regulation like number one in terms of priority, but like really sitting with, how does it feel when I claim this dark goddess frequency as part of my like actual genetic coding? Because every single person has both of these polarities as unity, right? What is your relationship with the dark goddess? Do you work with any of them? I myself am a Persephone devotee, but there's also Hecate. There's also there's so many like across pantheons. I realize I just named two Greek people. I am up in the Greek pantheon personally. That's kind of where a lot of my locus is. But there are so many dark goddesses that you can work with cross pantheon. What's your relationship to them? Are any of them calling out to you? What would starting to work or continuing to work with one of them look like? What is your relationship with being othered, rejected, or cast off? And it's like, of course, this is happening during Pride Month, right? It's like, in what way have you been othered from the communities that you should feel like you're a part of, just for being yourself, right? And then start to rewrite that script. So we have the story that you're carrying around. What is your relationship at present? And what do you want it to be like? How do we flip the script when it's not what we want it to be? How do we live more deeply into it when it's a frequency that's enticing to us? And this is a great moon for that kind of like reflection. When the moon is dark, working with the dark feminine is incredible. So there's this opportunity, I think, to really be with this frequency. Now, to kind of get into like what is going to be, I think, a little more commonly shared about this moon, this is absolutely like almost like a consciousness reset. And so this kind of, it all goes hand in hand. It's so hard for me to like personally extract it. I guess what I should say here is if you want to hear what other astrologers are going to say about it, go listen to their podcasts. Up next, Chiron is going to enter Taurus. I put all the dates of Chiron in Taurus for you here. We're just getting a little sneak preview from June 19th to September 17th of this year. Chiron, for the first time since 2018, will no longer be in Aries. Then, of course, because Chiron spends about half the year retrograde, Chiron's going to retrograde back into Aries until April 14th, 2027, when the Wounded Healer asteroid enters Taurus again. And then he's going to do the bulk of his stretch there. April 14th, 2027 through July 19th, 2033, Chiron will be in Taurus. And then Chiron's going to enter Gemini and retrograde back into Taurus from October 23rd, 2033 through May 5th, 2034. So we're really living into a new frequency, planetarily speaking. Chiron is kind of the final domino in this like chain of outer planets reconfiguring themselves. And so with Chiron and Aries, I really feel like since 2018, the collective has really been metabolizing a wound of the self. Think about like the collective journey with self-care since 2018. And then we had like the isolation of 2020 and, on and on. Like we have people, it's like for better or for worse, they're using like therapizing language because they're doing these deep dives into like almost like what's wrong with me, what's wrong with us, right? With this like Aries in everyone's chart, Aries rules a different realm of life, but collectively Aries rules the self always. So it's like the self and whatever realm Aries rules for you. So in this way, our inner orientation is going to shift from the self to the realm of value and resource, because that's what Taurus represents for the collective. Now, Taurus, where it sits in your chart, is a whole other story, unless you're an Aries rising, right? Because if you're an Aries rising, then Taurus does rule your second house of value and resource. So there's almost like two layers of every transit, collective and personal. collectively, our inner orientation is really going to become like healing our wounds around value, healing our wounds around resource. And sometimes this does look like challenges. Um, if you look at the economy, it's pretty easy to imagine that maybe something's going to have to give in the way that we're operating under late stage capitalism. A girl can dream. Okay. So I think the opportunity here is some somatic abundance work, like not just like writing something down, not just lighting a candle, but actually coming from this real embodied, almost like quantifiable experience of the body with abundance, looking around yourself and feeling the weight of your resource, looking around yourself and discovering true wealth, naming the value and resource that surrounds you. Money wound work. I mean, finding folks who resonate with you, who are speaking about money wounds, and getting their workbooks, taking their workshops, maybe doing one-on-ones. This isn't really something that like I am doing. I mean, who knows? When Chiron enters Taurus, check my website. Who knows? But right now, like starting to kind of like feel into who may be a voice that you want to anchor into, or maybe it's you. Maybe this is one of your gifts and you really need to bring that gift online during this time. So kind of sitting with that. And then journaling wise, really asking yourself, like, what makes you feel secure, stable, and foundationalized outside of just having enough money, right? Outside of just like being able to take care of the things that you need to take care of and bask in the things that you want to bask in. What tangible structures in your life provide value, security, and stability? Kind of cool. If it's a summer solstice, what's happening is the longest day of the year and the shortest night. And in the southern hemisphere, it's actually the shortest day and the longest night. The sun moving into Cancer, because Cancer is a cardinal sign, always marks the solstice. Just as the sun moving into Libra marks one of the equinoxes, the sun moving into Capricorn marks the other solstice, and the sun moving into Aries marks the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. These are our cardinal signs. The sun's obviously going to remain in Cancer for longer than just the summer solstice, but it carries this energy of fullness and the abundance of the harvest all the way through the season. Really. And then I really see this like continuing this thread of everything that we talked about, like with the Cancer transits, and especially with this new moon in Gemini, continuing this thread of protecting what's sacred to us and including the sacred feminine within us all in that protection. This is about Mother Ocean meeting Grandfather Sun. This is the steam that rises, the heat that gets put off when this oceanic frequency meets this bright burning star. I also feel like this time is like a tipping of the scales. This is a time where once we reach that longest day, the night starts to grow longer until they become equal at the equinox. And so we start to sense like we're at this halfway point almost through our year in terms of the Gregorian calendar, through our experience with the light. I mean, and we haven't really spoken into this on this call, but tropical astrology is not constellational. It's actually a study of light on Earth. And so in this way, like these solar celebrations are super, they literally set the entire astrological structure. So this is a big checkpoint for us. And it's like we start to prepare for the descent, right? I really feel like the descent begins with Libra season. And we'll do some of that work together. Um, but there's just this frequency of like, and how can we prepare to winter well? And it seems silly to think of that in the height of summer, but it's like, what can we do through this summertime, through this summer frequency to have a great winter season? How can we maximize our time this summer to feed us all winter long? And we think about our ancestors doing this, like that was very literal. This was still like kind of peak growing season with the first harvest festival falling on August 1st. So there is this frequency of like, how do we carry this fullness, this abundance all the way until we reach this energy again next year? So I think there's so many opportunities. It's summertime, but of course, I think solar magic is a great opportunity here. Making sun tea, charging crystals. I know we usually think of charging crystals under the moon, but charging crystals in the sun, making sure they're not photosensitive, looking at you, every colored quartz, amethyst, citrine, so on and so forth. I think even celestite fades in the sun. So being careful, not leaving them out too long. And then also just receiving light codes, going out in the sun when the sun's doing something cool, like engaged with maybe on this day, or engaged with a planet in Kazemi, or in opposition, or on the day of the new moon or the day of the full moon before it's nighttime when the moon is ruling, going and receiving, like being in that conscious relationship with the sun. Like, what do you have to tell me? Like, what do acting as almost like a vessel for the sun, what do you want me to carry out, you know? um the sun as our star, especially as we gain toward Jupiter being there. We'll talk about this in a moment. I just can't shut up about Jupiter, honestly. I should have just called this like Auburn talks about Jupiter all call long. This is also a great time to reflect on your journey since last June. We've been using that as like a threshold for like multiple things, but like for the Jupiter journey, but then also it's like since the last solstice, like what have you accomplished? Like what has grown in your life? What have you harvested? What have you done away with? What didn't work out? What did work out better than you even dreamed it? Right. And then really celebrating that harvest, inner and outer, whether that's coming to a new understanding of yourself, whether that's, launching something in your business, or, just generally feeling more radiant, feeling more yourself in the inner world, and then reflected outward. And then next, we'll circle up. Our paid subscribers are invited to Lionheart, our Jupiter and Leo celestial ceremony on Friday, June 26th. Now, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Jupiter doesn't enter Leo until June 30th, but we're already meeting that night for the Astrology of July. So we will be all together in ceremony for the 30th. We'll do something special. But in advance, I kind of want to do a ceremony to honor this Jupiter and Cancer journey and open the door to the Jupiter in Leo journey. So you can either upgrade your subscription or join a la carte. If you have any questions about that, you can let me know. And all the details will be in the replay email as well as the show notes. So on June 28th, the day that we're gathering, right? Is that the same day? No, 2 days later. 2 days later is what I meant to say. Mars enters Gemini. He's going to remain there until August 11th of this year. And Mars, of course, is our planet of action, drive, and aggression. And as soon as Mars enters Gemini, he's going to come like face to face with the electric planet of disruption, Uranus. So sparks fly, right? There's friction, there's divine tension. This is what I was saying at the beginning of the call. I think I wasn't recording quite yet, so I need to say it again. The beginning of this month is a little bit of a cakewalk in comparison to some of the astrology that we've like been living into because the frequency has been laid, right? We've started to get our sea legs. Like Uranus has been in Gemini for a little while, Saturn and Aquarius, or Saturn and Neptune have been in Aries for a little while. We are getting used to it, right? So the beginning of this month, the activations that are coming through are definitely setting us up for a transformation, but it isn't like monumental. This is really where things start to like intensify, right? Um, I'm not going to lie to you. Mars conjunct Uranus could be uncomfortable. I said agitation likely. You're going to be running hot. Like, so there's an awareness that you can move with. You know, that's one thing that my mentor really instilled in me early on is this idea of like the way that if we can figure out why the cosmic context of why something is occurring in our life, if we can pinpoint it in a chart, it's not actually disaster. That's not actually what she said to me, but my little, neurodivergent brain is like, great, I now have a method to effectively avoid disaster. Excellent. So there's this like knowing when we are engaged with the cosmic currents in this way. June 28th to I mean, and it's gonna fade. Mars moves much faster than Uranus, so I wouldn't say this entire time that tension is like thick. I would say it's like thickest at the beginning and starts to trail off. You get more used to it, and Mars gets further and further away from Uranus because Uranus is going to remain in the early degrees. But there is a tension. There is agitation. Mars is an agitator, and so is Uranus. So in this way, I don't think it's about like expecting to have friction, expecting to have confrontation. It's more like a predisposition that if friction, agitation, confrontation, conflict, if they do occur, it's not some like super deep reflection of your internal state necessarily, right? There's still a requirement of like reflection, right? Like we don't want to just like completely wash our hands of our behavior. But there's this moment where we can say, whether it's like with your partner, with the people that you work with your friends, there's this moment of like recalibration where we can say, is this about you and me? Or is this about Uranus and Mars? Is this just because today is agitating? Is this just because this is how it is today? Or is this because of some deeper thing going on between the two of us? And I think like in these types of, it's not that, sometimes it exposes what's already there. And sometimes it's just the astrology of the moment. So I think there's like an attunement process that can happen, especially like in the early days of this Mars and Gemini period, where it's like, how can you actually leverage this divine tension? Wow, I got really creative with my spelling on this slide. Tension. That we can use that tension to yield results, right? We can use this conjunction of Mars and Uranus to instigate the change that we want to see in our lives if we don't bury ourselves under the potential frustration, right? Past that frustration is something divine. And that's something that I can support you with both astrologically and with energy work. So if you get to this point and you're like, girlfriend, I need some help, I'm here. The opportunity here, nervous system regulation, whatever that looks like for you. I'm saying like, the propensity to become overstimulated instantaneously is high in these early days. So I think there's an invitation to just like, it's an air sign. Breath is our friend. Like, take a deep breath. Responding over reacting is going to be your friend. Like, we live in a culture that prioritizes immediate response and immediate reaction. And I think this is a transit that even though both of these planets have like a very like immediate quality to them, part of the integration of this energy is still taking your time, giving the moment the time it deserves, and giving the moment like the energy that it deserves from you as well. Taking a deep breath. And if after that breath you're not any more calm, taking space, right? And then I think the leverage here comes from mapping out your plan and taking action, especially as Mars is in the later degrees of Gemini toward the end of this transit, maybe like mid-July through the end of the transit. It's like hit the ground running. You know what I mean? Because Uranus and Gemini, as we talked about, is like increasing the speed with which we manifest directly through consciousness. And Mars swooping in is only continuing that. One of the best ways that I think we can kind of like soften the edges of these more difficult transits is actually working devotionally with the planets directly themselves. And that's something we're actually going to be doing in an offer that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit called A Celestial Affair. But yeah, taking action, moving with the aligned action, allowing your ideas to come to fruition when they feel aligned. And then the day before Jupiter enters Leo, Mercury is going to go retrograde. So, and that's one of the reasons that we're not doing the paid gathering on the day that Jupiter enters Leo, is because I'm still going to do the astrology of the month call, but I wanted our paid gathering to be a little ahead of this. And we might be able to sneak that July one after, because the likelihood of technical difficulties for your girl who is a Virgo rising, it's high. It's high. Mercury is going to be retrograding only in Cancers. You know, sometimes he spans multiple signs, but just in Cancer from June 29th through July 23rd. So this is about deep reflection on the journey so far. And then this reflection continues, like this reflection period is going to continue right up to when the South Node sweeps into Leo. So like this Cancerian energy closing out this chapter of Jupiter in Cancer is being supported, as you can see, by multiple planetary bodies. And then like this Mercury retrograde period is kind of like the final swoop, like it's almost like we're moving on. Like it's like maybe you're moving out of your house, or maybe you're like on vacation and you do that final sweep. Did we get everything? Have we considered everything? Have we integrated everything? Okay, now we can go. And when Mercury stations direct at the end of July, just a few days later, we have the South Node entering Leo and the North Node entering Aquarius. So there's this like, I don't know, this like ushering in of this energy that Mercury is providing for us, closing out in a good way as well. So I think that this is going to be a time of reinforcing boundaries. You know, I've spoken into this quite a few times tonight. Sometimes a test of boundaries can be uncomfortable, and sometimes it can feel like really empowering. And I feel like if you do the boundary work in advance and you're moving with the awareness of what your boundaries are and what you may say if it gets challenged. And a great resource for that actually is Boundaries and Protection by Pixie Lighthorse. It is basically a collection of essays around like the different boundaries that like we have to keep, and like stories around them. And then actually in the back of the book, there's like scripts for like boundary crossing conversations. So really great resource there. I highly recommend it. I'll probably reread it during this time. It's also a time where like emotional truths may surface. So really being gentle with yourself, really, you know, continuing to focus on nervous system regulation. Mercury does rule our nervous system, also rules short travels, the mind, communication, our technology. So I think the opportunity here is to, again, protect what's sacred by enforcing your boundaries, make a gratitude list, naming all your blessings since last June, and then start to script the blessings that are on their way now, that you can feel in your field. Maybe what's grown out of the blessings since last June, where are they landing you? And then on the same day that Mercury stations retrograde, we have a full moon in Capricorn. So this means that while the sun is in Cancer with Mercury retrograde, the moon is in Capricorn directly opposite. So this is another moon of shifting patriarchal structures, in my opinion. Am I biased? Yeah. Am I right? Probably also yes. This is the last full moon before the nodes change signs. So there is this energy of cosmic completion here, releasing structures that create stagnancy and stifle expression. And we can witness that through the lens of patriarchy and outside of that lens as well. But kind of like the Venn diagram of where they overlap is probably where this is activating the most, because Cancer and Capricorn traditionally are coined the mother and father of the zodiac. So it's quite literally, it's a very literal playing out of a rebalance of that dynamic. So I think the opportunity here is on this full moon in Capricorn, a cord cutting ritual between you and the forces that stifle your power. Cancer is ruled by the moon, so the sun will actually be ruled by the moon in Capricorn on this full moon, and that moon will be ruled by Saturn in Aries. So there's also an opportunity to do some Saturn magic, do some Saturn devotionals. Saturn is, I'm going to say, the strictest planetary body that we engage with on this planet. And so doing devotional work with Saturn is not just important, but also rewarded. So there's also an opportunity to script around the structures that uphold your dream life. Capricorn is a structural architect. A lot of people don't necessarily think of Capricorn being super energetic because it's an earth sign. It gets equated with like the material realm more often than not. But Capricorn has this unique ability to see energy on a structural level to make the immaterial more material. So, doing some work around the structures that uphold your dreams and doing some work around the forces and structures that stifle your power as well. So maybe like that cord cutting ritual, and then like what's available to you and the structures of your life on the other side of that cord cutting. And then finally, Jupiter enters Leo. It's honestly hysterical that I'm so excited for this transit because Leo literally rules my 12th house. I just ghost all of you. I'm just kidding. That would never happen. But June 30th, 2026 through July 26th, 2027, this is about creative growth and blossoming. Jupiter in Leo really represents a desire for visibility and recognition, taking up space and moving from the power of your authentic heart. And the world needs so much of this that it's so amazing that we get to live into this all together. This is, and I'm in this program right now run by Captolia, who's like a brand and marketing maven. It's called Witch and Famous, and it's actually ending. I don't know if she planned this at all, but our journey together is actually ending at the end of June, and then we get like released into this frequency of Jupiter and Leo. It is a transit of visibility, and it lasts for a full year. So I'm really feeling that wave there. So just like naming that here, so grateful. I think there's like a frequency here of like, I think we should be ready to outgrow circumstances that require us to be small. Or and just because we've outgrown something doesn't mean we necessarily immediately have to like move ourselves, have that like actualized, quantified shift in our life. It could just mean that things get pinchy, right? But I would be cognizant that during this transit, you become larger than life, especially in the realm that Leo touches in your chart. So I think there's just like an awareness rather than an expectation that things that have worked for a long time because you were resonating in the way that you were resonating might begin to fall away as you strengthen and grow and take up this massive space that Jupiter asks of us. Um, Also, for this full year, Jupiter is ruled by the sun because the sun rules Leo. So the solar seasons grow in power and influence while Jupiter is in Leo. So wherever the sun is by transit, like what season it is more important while Jupiter's in Leo than it's been since, I'd argue, like the last time we had a major planetary body in Leo, which I can't think off the top of it. That would have been a cool little fact to look up, but I didn't think of it until right now. So I think there's an opportunity for more solar magic and solar season magic, like being with the archetypes of the zodiac as the sun is warming that space. This is also a year to get creative and allow yourself and your work to be beheld. I think that's one of like the most important things about fire sign energy, fire energy in general, is it's actually not enough to just create. It's not just about the creation. It's about stepping back and beholding it, especially when it's a Leo activation. Leo doesn't just want to like create and move on to the next thing. It wants like 50 jillion people to be like, that is amazing and beautiful, and we should be proud. And so, how can we gift ourselves that experience? How do we make our work and ourselves visible enough that our art, our creations, our work in the world gets to be beheld, revered, celebrated in the spotlight, right? Yeah. And of course, we are circling up. We're going to go deep dive. We'll also have like I will also do a podcast episode on Jupiter and Leo for everybody who's not a paid subscriber, but it won't have like, the ritual invitations and altogether juiciness, the same juiciness that the paid call will have. And then, of course, we'll close out the month together for the Astrology of July. It's going to be on Tuesday, June 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern. It will, of course, be free. And we will do something Jupiterian together. I haven't decided quite what it is, but what we'll do is we'll go through the Astrology of July, and then we will do like an honoring of Jupiter's entrance into Leo. So don't miss it. So let's stay woven over the next month. I'm so excited to see everything that you manifest, everything that you create over this next month. Ways to continue to work with me and stay like woven with the coven are I'm doing these Jupiter and Leo mini sessions, and I actually just like bumped the price up a little. I only sold a handful at last week, and I did my first one. Was it yesterday? I don't know. What is time? I did my first one, and it was so much fun that I was like, I've got to do more of these. So I've opened them up at $44 for 30 minutes, and we will dive into, which is a pretty deep discount. Usually my 30-minute sessions are $77. So this is a steal. But it's because we're really honed in on just Jupiter. Where's Jupiter sitting in your chart? What is your personal relationship to Jupiter like? Where was Jupiter lighting up your life while it was in Cancer? And where is it heading into while Jupiter is in Leo? We'll talk about how to anchor into your blessings, important dates for rituals, for alignments. And you can scan this QR code if you're on the call now, or the link will be in the replay email and the show notes for you. And then potentially what I'm most excited about for the summer is my summer project, A Celestial Affair. I am writing my next book, and I want to bring y'all behind the scenes. So I have always had this vision for this book. It's a book about connecting relationally and ritually with the celestial bodies that we study in astrology, so that we're not just memorizing the correspondences of the planets and the signs and all and the glyphs and all of this, but we're actually forming an intuitive and intimate relationship with, as an animist witch, what I believe to be like entities, beings, these frequencies that we can actually cultivate relationship with. So this book is all about cultivating this connection. And I've always known that I wanted meditations to exist for each planet and each sign. And unfortunately, for books, you can't close your eyes and read a meditation, right? So the meditation will be printed in there. But I always wanted to have an audio library to go along with the book, so that as a reader, you can experience the meditation with audio if that's your jam. Um, so in this way, that means I have to record like 25 meditations. And I'm like envisioning myself sitting alone in my studio doing these meditations. And I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. Like what I want is to sit with seekers, sit with the people who are going to be reading the book, sit in the collective field of energy that exists when we open the door to more than just ourselves, to be on a call, to be in a digital, etheric, energetic space. And so I'm really excited. This is a buy donation offer. The schedule is a little aggressive. We are starting June 14th and we wrap up by the end of August. And in this way, we will be like releasing ourselves from the pressure of you guys coming to every single one live. If it aligns, excellent. But making space for the ones that you're really feeling the pull. It's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern is usually my sweet spot. There's going to be a few that we'll have to do at 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll announce that along the way. But the schedule is already loaded up for you to take a look at on this page that this links to. And in this way, like, if it aligns, great. If not, within 24 business hours, you'll have the recording. And then you'll also be the first to receive the fully polished versions of the meditations. So those instant replays are going to be like the actual replay of the call. And then I'm going to do some back end magic and create a very polished meditation library for the launch of the book. And y'all will get first access to that. There's different tiers that you can come in at because it is donation based. And I'm saying like literally $1, please come. Like $2, like it doesn't matter what it is because it's a gift to me actually for y'all to be there. But if you want to support the work, I mean, obviously clearing my desk to write a book is definitely an expensive decision that I'm making like for our household. And I'm so excited to do it. But the different tiers unlock different rewards. So if you want to donate more, you actually receive more than just the meditations. So you can unlock things like a advanced reader copy of the digital edition of the book, being thanked in the acknowledgments, one-on-one sessions with me, paid subscriptions to Inner Orbit, and either a deep discount or full enrollment covered to the certification course that all of this is kind of leading up to level 1. So yeah, I hope you'll join me. It's kind of a bit of a wander. It's a bit of a kind of like loosey goosey journeying that we'll be embarking on. But I can't wait. It is going to be so much fun. Already, the folks who have joined are some of my favorite people on earth. So I cannot wait. Yeah, we start in just a couple of weeks and we'll be going for a while. So if you're hearing this like in non-linear time and it's like the end of June and you're like, dang, it's already started, like, please still join us. because you will get instant access to the replays that have already happened, and you can drop right into the live calls with us if it's still going on. And then, of course, y'all will be the first one to read the book too, which is just, I'm so excited. Beautiful. Well, that's what I have for y'all today. I'm so excited for the astrology of this month. And as always, if you're looking for some one-on-one support, my books are open. And I love y'all so much.